In 2025, Canada's national debt crossed $1.3 trillion. Household debt hit a record high, and housing prices remain among the most unaffordable in the world. Yet, most Canadians are going about their daily lives, unaware that the country may be quietly heading toward an economic disaster. What if we told you that Canada's economy could be on the brink of collapse by 2026? From a crumbling housing market and rising interest rates to a severe labor shortage and global tensions, the warning signs are everywhere. But the media isn't talking about it enough. And by the time it hits the headlines, it may already be too late. In this video, we're breaking down 10 critical reasons why Canada's economic future could be in serious danger, and what it means for you, your job, your savings, and your home. Stay with us, because some of these reasons will shock you. Number 1. Skyrocketing national debt. Canada's national debt has reached over $1.3 trillion, and it's growing faster than ever. In 2026 alone, the government is expected to spend more than $60 billion just on interest payments. That's more than what Canada spends on healthcare transfers to provinces. Imagine paying so much in credit card interest that you can't afford groceries. That's what our federal budget is starting to look like. And unlike a household, a country can't just declare bankruptcy without sending shockwaves through its entire economy. This rising debt is a result of years of deficit spending, made worse by massive stimulus programs during the COVID-19 pandemic, inflation relief, and expanding public services. But here's the real problem. The economy is not growing fast enough to keep up with the debt. Experts are warning that if interest rates stay high, and they likely will, Canada could enter a dangerous cycle where debt payments crowd out funding for critical programs like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. It's not just a number on a balance sheet. A massive national debt affects everyone. It can lead to higher taxes, reduced public services, and lower investor confidence. International credit rating agencies are already watching closely, and if Canada's credit rating drops, borrowing becomes even more expensive. That means future generations may inherit a country with fewer resources and fewer opportunities. The question is, how long can we keep borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today? The clock is ticking, and the impact will be felt not just in Ottawa, but in every Canadian home. Number 2. Housing market time bomb. Canada's housing market has become a ticking time bomb. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the average home price is now over 10 times the median household income. That means owning a home is no longer a dream for most. It's a fantasy. For years, low interest rates encourage people to borrow huge amounts to buy overpriced properties. But as rates have climbed, mortgage payments have doubled or even tripled for many homeowners. Thousands are now stretched to their financial limits. And if rates stay high or climb further, defaults and forced sales could skyrocket. This isn't just a housing issue, it's an economic one. Over 70% of Canadian household wealth is tied to real estate, and if property values collapse, it could wipe out billions in equity, reduce consumer spending, and trigger a recession. Already, early signs of distress are showing. Home sales are slowing, price drops are becoming more common, and more Canadians are taking on variable-rate mortgages they can barely afford. It's a fragile situation, and it wouldn't take much, a spike in unemployment, a global shock, or another rate hike, to cause a housing domino effect. Governments have tried to cool the market with taxes and restrictions, but these have barely scratched the surface. Meanwhile, foreign investors, speculative buyers, and limited housing supply continue to fuel the bubble. If the bubble bursts, it won't just hurt wealthy investors. It will impact renters, first-time buyers, and the broader economy. Construction jobs will disappear. Bank defaults could rise. Consumer confidence will plummet. This housing crisis isn't just about real estate anymore. It's about the foundation of Canada's entire economic stability. The real question is, are we already too late to stop the collapse, or is the worst still ahead? Number 3. Productivity crisis. Canada is facing a silent economic killer that doesn't make headlines but affects everything from wages to national growth, a deepening productivity crisis. Despite a highly educated workforce, Canada's productivity growth is among the lowest in the G7. In simple terms, this means Canadians are working harder but not producing more. For an economy to grow sustainably, it needs to produce more goods and services efficiently, but Canada has been falling behind. In fact, recent reports show that output per worker has been declining, while other countries continue to modernize and innovate. This isn't just a technical problem. It impacts your paycheck, your job security, and your cost of living. When productivity is low, businesses make less money and can't afford to pay higher wages. It also means the government collects less in taxes, which limits its ability to invest in social programs, healthcare, and infrastructure. At the same time, inflation makes everyday life more expensive. So, if productivity doesn't improve, Canadians will likely face lower incomes and higher living costs, a painful double blow that hurts everyone, especially the middle class. Economists blame several factors: low business investment in technology, lagging innovation, and a lack of competition in key industries. Canada also struggles with red tape and regulation, which stifles startups and discourages risk-taking. If we don't reverse this trend, Canada may become less competitive on the global stage, losing jobs and investment to faster-moving economies. The truth is, no amount of natural resources or real estate can save an economy that doesn't innovate and produce efficiently. If we want to avoid long-term decline, boosting productivity isn't just an economic goal, it's a national emergency. The question is, can we catch up before we fall too far behind? Number 4. Dependence on foreign investment. Canada's economy has long relied on a steady flow of foreign investment to fuel growth, create jobs, and drive innovation. But that dependence is starting to show serious cracks. In 2024, foreign direct investment, FDI, in Canada dropped by 12%, a warning sign that international investors are starting to look elsewhere. Whether it's due to high taxes, unpredictable policies, or competition from emerging markets, Canada is starting to lose its appeal as a safe and profitable place to invest. And when investors leave, jobs, capital, and innovation leave with them. The problem is, Canada doesn't have a strong backup plan. Many of its key industries, like real estate, energy, and tech, are propped up by foreign money. Without it, those sectors can slow down fast. For example, commercial real estate projects that once relied on overseas funding are now being paused or canceled. Venture capital in the tech sector is drying up, forcing promising startups to either shrink or relocate to the US or Europe. This isn't just about losing money, it's about losing the future industries that could have driven the next generation of growth. When foreign investors pull back, it sends a dangerous signal that Canada is no longer a top-tier player in the global economy. This can trigger a vicious cycle of reduced investment, slower growth, and shrinking global influence. Over time, this leads to lower job creation, stagnant wages, and weaker innovation, all of which hurt everyday Canadians. If confidence continues to slip, even our currency could feel the impact, making imports more expensive and pushing inflation higher. In a world where capital moves fast, losing investor trust can have long-lasting consequences. The big question is, how do we rebuild that trust before it's gone for good? Number 5. Overreliance on natural resources. Canada has built a large part of its economy on the strength of its natural resources, from oil and gas to timber and minerals. These industries have long been reliable sources of revenue, exports, and jobs. But in today's rapidly changing world, this overreliance is starting to look more like a weakness than a strength. As global markets shift toward clean energy and sustainable technologies, demand for fossil fuels and traditional resource exports is expected to decline sharply over the next decade. If Canada doesn't adapt quickly, it could be left behind in a new global economy. The challenge is that these sectors are deeply embedded in the country's financial system. Provincial economies like Alberta's are heavily dependent on oil royalties, and banks have billions tied up in resource projects. A drop in commodity prices or stricter international climate regulations could trigger massive financial shocks, leading to job losses, budget shortfalls, and reduced investor confidence. Already, major energy projects are being delayed or canceled due to environmental pushback and policy uncertainty. Meanwhile, countries like the US, China, and Germany are racing ahead with green energy investments, while Canada risks falling further behind. Without serious investment in economic diversification, Canada may soon find itself stuck with outdated industries and shrinking global demand. The shift to a cleaner, tech-driven global economy is not a distant future. It's happening now. Yet, Canada still lacks a clear, aggressive strategy to transition away from its dependency on natural resources. If this doesn't change, the country could be facing not just lost profits, but a generational economic crisis. The truth is, no economy can thrive in the 21st century by clinging to 20th century models. The real question is, will Canada pivot in time or stay tied to a sinking ship? If this is opening your eyes, let us know in the comments. Which of these warning signs hits closest to home for you? We put a ton of work into making these videos, so if you're finding value, support us with a quick subscribe. It's just one click, but it fuels everything we do. Number 6. Aging population and labor shortages. Canada is experiencing a dramatic demographic shift that's putting serious strain on its economy. By 2026, 1 in every 5 Canadians will be over the age of 65. This aging population means more people are retiring, leaving the workforce, and drawing on pensions and healthcare services, all while fewer young workers are entering the job market to replace them. The result? A growing labor shortage that is already being felt across key sectors like healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. Without enough workers, businesses struggle to grow, services slow down, and economic output takes a direct hit. This isn't just a future problem. It's already here. Hospitals are reporting record staff shortages, trades industries are desperate for skilled labor, and many companies are unable to fill essential roles. Immigration has helped ease the pressure slightly, but it hasn't kept pace with the rate of retirement. The bigger issue is that training new workers takes time, and the current education and apprenticeship systems are not producing talent fast enough. On top of that, younger generations are facing rising costs of living, job instability, and burnout, factors that make long-term participation in the workforce even more challenging. An aging population also means higher public spending on healthcare and pensions, while a smaller working-age population contributes less in taxes. This imbalance could create a funding crisis in the coming years, forcing the government to either cut services or increase taxes, neither of which are popular or easy solutions. Canada's ability to sustain its standard of living depends on having a healthy, skilled, and growing workforce. Without urgent reforms in labor policy, education, and immigration, the country could soon face a perfect storm of rising costs and falling productivity. The question is, are we prepared to care for our aging population while still keeping the economy moving forward? Number 7. Weak innovation and R&D investment. In a world driven by technology and innovation, Canada is falling dangerously behind. Despite being one of the world's most developed nations, Canada invests far less in research and development, R&D, compared to other countries in the OECD. In fact, Canada ranks near the bottom in business R&D spending among advanced economies. This lack of investment is a major reason why the country is struggling to build globally competitive industries outside of its traditional strongholds like natural resources. Without a strong innovation ecosystem, it becomes nearly impossible to drive long-term economic growth in a fast-changing world. Startups and tech companies in Canada often face an uphill battle. Access to funding is limited, regulatory barriers are high, and many innovators eventually move to the United States or Europe to find the support they need. Despite the talent available, there's a serious disconnect between potential and performance. Meanwhile, countries like South Korea, Germany, and the U.S. are rapidly expanding their tech sectors and creating high-paying jobs that fuel their economies. If Canada doesn't start investing more heavily in innovation, it risks becoming a follower, not a leader, in the industries of the future. Innovation isn't just about gadgets and apps. It's about solving real problems, increasing productivity, and creating new opportunities. Weak R&D investment means fewer breakthroughs in healthcare, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing. It means fewer homegrown solutions to pressing national challenges. And it means fewer high-quality jobs for the next generation. Canada has the talent, the education system, and the resources, but it lacks a bold, unified strategy. If nothing changes, the country may find itself importing innovation instead of exporting it, paying the price in lost jobs, weaker growth, and diminished global influence. The question is, will Canada start building its future or keep relying on the past? Number 8. Consumer debt crisis. While government debt grabs headlines, a quieter but equally dangerous crisis is unfolding at the household level. The average Canadian now owes $1.85 for every $1 of disposable income, one of the highest consumer debt levels in the developed world. For many families, rising interest rates have turned monthly debt payments into a crushing burden. Mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and student debt are stretching household budgets to the breaking point. As inflation keeps prices high and wage growth stays sluggish, more Canadians are finding themselves trapped in a cycle of borrowing just to stay afloat. This growing debt load isn't just a personal finance issue. It's a threat to the entire economy. When households are focused on repaying debt, they spend less on goods and services. That reduced consumer spending can drag down entire industries, from retail to hospitality. Worse, if interest rates remain high or unemployment rises, a wave of defaults and bankruptcies could follow, sending shockwaves through Canada's financial system. Already, we're seeing a spike in missed payments and rising insolvency rates, especially among younger Canadians who entered adulthood during a period of easy credit and unaffordable housing. Financial institutions are becoming increasingly nervous. Banks may tighten lending, making it harder for individuals and businesses to access credit, slowing growth even further. Meanwhile, some analysts fear that if housing prices drop significantly, heavily indebted households could end up underwater, owing more than their homes are worth. That's a recipe for financial panic. The warning signs are all there, but the question remains, how many people and how many banks can withstand the pressure if this debt bubble bursts? Without serious changes in financial education, lending practices, and wage growth, Canada's consumer debt crisis may soon become the next major economic shock. Number 9. Global economic shocks. Canada's economy is deeply connected to global markets, which means when the world sneezes, Canada often catches a cold. With over 75% of exports tied to the United States alone, any serious economic trouble south of the border, like a recession, financial crisis, or political instability, could send shockwaves across Canada almost instantly. Add in tensions with China, ongoing conflicts, and the growing risk of global supply chain disruptions, and it becomes clear that Canada is vulnerable to economic storms it cannot control. In recent years, we've already seen how global shocks can hit hard. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed just how fragile international supply chains are. The war in Ukraine drove up global food and energy prices. Rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait and Middle East continue to threaten trade routes and investor confidence. For a country like Canada that depends heavily on international trade, foreign investment, and stable global demand, these disruptions are more than headlines. They're direct threats to jobs, prices, and long-term stability. What's more concerning is that Canada is not prepared for prolonged global turbulence. Its economic strategy still leans heavily on exporting raw materials, relying on a strong U.S. economy, and importing essential goods. If multiple global shocks hit at once, such as another pandemic, a major war, or a U.S. debt crisis, the ripple effects could lead to supply shortages, inflation spikes, and job losses at home. In this kind of high-risk global environment, resilience matters more than ever. Canada must build economic buffers, diversify trade partners, and reduce its exposure to fragile supply chains. Otherwise, the country could find itself caught in the middle of global chaos with no real escape plan. The question is, what happens when the next global shock hits, and Canada isn't ready? Number 10. Political instability and policy gridlock. One of the most underestimated threats to Canada's economic future is the growing political instability and policy gridlock at both the federal and provincial levels. Over the past few years, deep divisions have emerged over major issues like climate policy, energy development, immigration, and taxation. As provinces clash with Ottawa and political parties grow more polarized, it's becoming harder to pass coherent, long-term economic strategies. Investors and businesses thrive on certainty, but Canada's current political landscape is anything but predictable. This instability is more than just political drama. It directly affects economic confidence. When governments can't agree on major infrastructure projects, energy policy, or housing solutions, progress stalls. Foreign investors take notice. Rating agencies grow cautious, and domestic businesses delay decisions. Recent examples include pipeline cancellations, rapid shifts in carbon tax policies, and conflicting approaches to healthcare and education funding. These inconsistencies create an environment of uncertainty where economic growth is slowed by endless debate rather than driven by action. Perhaps most worrying is the growing public distrust in institutions and leaders. With rising frustration over affordability, healthcare wait times, and lack of economic opportunity, more Canadians are losing faith in government to deliver solutions. This can lead to voter apathy, social unrest, and the rise of more extreme political movements, making compromise even harder. In times of economic uncertainty, strong and stable leadership is essential. But what happens when leadership itself becomes part of the crisis? If Canada can't overcome its internal divisions and forge a united economic vision, the country may find itself stuck in a cycle of short-term politics and long-term decline. The big question isn't just who's in power, it's whether anyone can lead the country through the economic storm ahead with clarity, courage, and real action. Canada stands at a critical economic crossroads. The signs of a looming collapse are no longer hidden. They're becoming clearer with each passing month. From unsustainable national debt and a dangerously overheated housing market to shrinking productivity and an aging workforce, the foundation of Canada's economy is showing serious cracks. These aren't isolated issues. They're deeply connected, and together, they paint a picture of an economy at risk of entering a long-term decline if bold action isn't taken soon. But while the threats are real, the future is not set in stone. Canada still has time to shift course, but it will take more than temporary fixes or political promises. What's needed now is real leadership, smart long-term planning, and a willingness to confront hard truths. We must invest in innovation, support a sustainable labor force, diversify our industries, and strengthen our financial systems. Because without these changes, the next economic shock might not just shake the country, it could break it. We made this video not to spread fear, but to spark awareness. These are complex issues, but understanding them is the first step toward demanding better policies and making more informed decisions. Whether you're a student, a worker, a business owner, or someone just trying to get by, these challenges affect you directly. So let us know in the comments, what concerns you most about Canada's future? We want to hear your voice. If you found this video helpful or thought-provoking, please support our channel by subscribing. It's just one click, but it helps us continue creating honest, well-researched content that matters. We put a lot of effort into every video, and your support truly means everything.